So first things first, what to avoid during exam season or throughout the academic year? Well, first is ignoring your syllabus. A lot of times when students get their syllabus, they'll only look at it at the first day or when assignments are about to be due. The reality is that your syllabus has plenty of information that can actually help you, whether it's small things such as seeing what or whether it's knowing what your professors prefer, such as certain formats or when assignments are due, or even getting a little bit more information on assignments. Always keep your syllabus close to you or somewhere where you can refer to it relatively easily because it actually has plenty of information that can actually help you. Next is not asking for help. Although this is a very obvious thing to avoid, it's actually pretty hard if you're an introvert like me or have the mentality of, oh, I can just ask my friends for help. Although asking help from friends can be actually helpful, it's more helpful and useful if you ask your TAs or professors because they're the ones teaching it or actually marking your material. And you may not want to go to your professors or teachers because you don't want to look foolish in front of them, or you might think that, oh, I should know this. The reality is that they're there to help. There's a reason why they give you their emails or have office hours. They're waiting for you to ask for help, so take advantage of that. Remember, students often lose interest in their studies because they don't understand their subjects. The third thing to avoid is skipping your readings and not making notes. It's always easy to say, oh, I'll do my readings later or when the time comes, such as during reading week or closer to exams. But avoiding your readings can actually be very stressful because you may be prolonging it for so long that there's too many readings to actually catch up on, especially if you have to make notes. Or it might be difficult to follow through lectures because you don't understand the material because you didn't do the readings. Without Without the command of language, you cannot independently explore or expand your intellect. Your lack of knowledge will hinder your process of your daily life. So actually doing your readings will improve your overall studies. The fourth thing to try to avoid is sticking to only one study method, such as reading your notes over and over again. The reality is that just by reading your notes, you may not actually be retaining anything. At least that was the issue with me. I would spend hours rereading my notes over and over again, and when it came close to the exam or the day of the exam, I would blank out. I wouldn't remember what my notes actually said. Because of this, I had to move away from sticking to one study method, whether it was trying new approaches such as using a study group or even re-watching lectures. The next thing that a lot of students may not be realizing while they're studying is looking for the right atmosphere to study. Most students are Most students attach their studies to a study room or a specific environment that they like to study in, whether it's loud or quiet, messy or neat. A lot of times, if you're used to a certain environment and if one thing is off in that environment, then you won't be able to focus on your studies. As a result, you'll stop studying, wait until the issue disappears, or simply go on your phone and waste endless hours. This can be a major drawback to your progress as a student. As a result, try to study during different environments and loud and quiet ones, messy or neat ones. This way you won't be constantly seeking to satisfy the right environment. And the last thing to avoid is procrastination. This this is very important, especially during exam season, because it's very hectic. A lot of times you have exams or assignments due during the same week or during even the same day. Because of this, you may not actually have enough time to provide enough energy to do all of your assignments. So, in order to avoid this, try to plan ahead to limit your stress. Another form of procrastinating is pushing the time to do things, saying, oh, I'll do it at this certain time, or after this episode, or after I eat. But the thing is, these are very detrimental things to your studying. In fact, if your stomach is full, the brain and mind will not be as active. as it should be. A heavy stomach will only induce sleep. At least this was the issue with me. If I ate a heavy meal before studying, I would become very lazy and sluggish, and I wouldn't really focus on my work. As a result, you should just eat a little bit or have a light meal before you study. That way, when it comes to studying, you won't be hungry and you won't feel overly full. So now that we spoke about some things to avoid during the academic season, let's focus on some helpful study habits that will help you in the long run. First is writing down important dates. In other words, when you get all of your syllabuses, get them all together and write down important dates side by side. This way you can compare what's due and it'll be beneficial because you can delegate your time. You can see what's due when and try to schedule how much time you need for each assignment diligently. Next is creating a timetable. Make a weekly or daily timetable that you can spread your work and time effectively and efficiently. But remember to be realistic and lenient. Provide enough time for yourself to take breaks and plenty of leniency in case something last minute comes up. Thinking, reading, and overthinking use great amounts of energy. Extreme mental activity is more tiring than physical activity. When your resources become almost depleted, it's your body's sign to saying to rest. So when making timetables, also create deadlines. That way you can stay on track. Whether the deadlines are, oh, I'll do a chapter a day or finish this many pages by this day or this time. The last helpful tip that will help you in the long run is doing your readings on time. I couldn't emphasize this more. Whether you prefer to do your readings right before a lecture or right after. Personally, I prefer to write before because I would understand what the professor is saying. I wouldn't have to My notes wouldn't be as repetitive because I would know what not to put in. And also I could ask questions if I didn't understand things. I wouldn't also have to scramble and hurry around trying to finish dozens of readings before exam time or when I had assignments due. And a little note is if you want to accept, if you want to effectively make good notes, I would suggest putting page numbers with your notes. That way when you have assignments to do, you'll also have your reference numbers there. Now earlier I mentioned looking for different strategies for study methods. So here we're going to talk about that. When finding the right study method for you, you must self-reflect. While analyzing yourself, ask yourself how you perform in previous classes, how your marks differ in various subjects. Remember, each person is unique in this world. Each of us has our unique qualities which makes us different from each other. That being said, each of us will also benefit from different study techniques. So when it comes to studying for your exams, many people reread their notes over and over again. Well, this approach might not work for you. Think you may think to yourself, you think of it this way: you cannot feed information to a computer without preparation. It has to be transformed into computer language, and it has to be programmed. In other words, you can't just keep rereading your information to yourself if you don't understand it. So try to put it in your own words first. If you can put it into your own words, then you can easily understand it. Next is listen to it instead of reading. Through self-evaluation, you may realize that you remember lecture material more compared to readings. Ask yourself, why is that? Well, maybe it's because you retain information more by hearing it rather than reading it. If you can, ask a friend or a family member to read the material out for you. If no one's around, then record the material so you can listen to it, or get your computer to even read it out loud to you. Now, when it comes to reading, a huge difference can be the way you read your material, whether it's inside your head or out loud. For me at least, when I read material in my head, I read it very fast. I'm not really processing the information, but just skimming through it, and I also become very tired of reading as well. But when I read the material out loud, I actually have to progress what the words are saying, think what each thing means and how I'm saying it. And when I say it out loud, I can actually hear it through my head. So I'm progressing the information better. Now, the fourth thing is discussing. This tip was extremely beneficial for me. I would talk to my peers or family members about the things I learned, especially during exam time. I would ask them to test me on the material so I knew what I needed to focus on and what I didn't. If nobody was around, I would just ask myself questions and not look at my notes for the answers until after I answered it myself. By answering the questions yourself, you actually become more confident in your answers and more confident in the material that you know them as well. So I highly suggest discussing the material with family, peers, or even by yourself. Finally, if all these tips don't work out, or that if you become overwhelmed with the exam season, just take a minute and remember why you're studying, why you're putting all this effort into your work. Whether you're trying to prove something, make a living, gain knowledge, or your dream job. Just remember that you're studying for a purpose and use this purpose as motivation to continue studying.